Everyone, we are in our last module and we're going to be talking about advanced strategies for serialization that you can utilize. And one of them is adapting your written serial into an audio serial. There is a few different ways we can do this, but if your book is written as a serial, chances are it will do well as an audio serial. A couple things that we can do is host serialized fiction podcast. And this is a little bit different than an audiobook, but we'll get into that in a second. You can record and release it on YouTube. I know a lot of people are testing out how it could work on YouTube, different things that you can do and what works best, whether releasing the entire audiobook at once or releasing little snippets. If you want to release it on YouTube, you can try Reel or YouTube Shorts. You could try Reels too, TikTok, and having that audio serialized so people find part one, part two, part three, however long it may be. Maybe it's 2,000 chapters long. That would be a lot. Next, you could do is license your book to serial audio apps. Again, like our warning before, make sure that you are seeking legal advice and getting a lawyer to review your contracts because you never know what people might sneak in there. But definitely do your diligence and make sure that you're understanding what rights you're selling or licensing for the term and for it in advance and royalties as well. So, for fiction podcast or sometimes called audio dramas, we chatted a little bit about how it's estimated that 20% of people who are listening to podcasts are listening to serialized fiction podcasts. And how is this different from an audiobook? Audiobook, you have one or two narrators usually. They are reading the entire book that you wrote and you're releasing it all at once. With serialized fiction podcast, you might take that same audiobook and if you had written that book as if it were a serial, so the shorter chapters with those cliffhangers, then you can just easily cut that book up into small episodes that you can publish one by one in a serialized format. For fiction podcasts, you can run these on a bunch of different places. I would recommend starting with Spotify because Spotify, you can easily upload podcasts and they have a lot of community tools built in. So you can, I believe you can run polls. You can see analytics on who and how many people are listening to your story, who it, where in the world they are. I believe you can do commenting and you can do art for each individual episode that you upload, I think. And so those are a few ways to get people to funnel people into this specific community that you're building around audio. Uploading on Spotify is for podcast is going to be different than uploading on um Spotify for audiobooks. If you're doing audiobooks, you're probably going through Find a Way. For Spotify, there are a couple different platforms that you can use to manage this podcast. And those platforms, you're able to add the content right in there. You can have front and back matter. So you're going to have front and back matter for every single episode that you upload. And front matter can look something like, I don't know, maybe you have a sound that you play that says your author name after it, and it leads into the episode. Or maybe you do previously on this spicy romance podcast. This is what happened. Utilizing those soap opera techniques in there, back matter what you're going to do because I don't believe the podcasts can be, like, paid for. Like, listeners can't pay for them at the moment. I could be wrong at that. But you are going to want to direct people at the end of every episode, for early access on your subscription. So you can say, "Hey, oh, this is the end of chapter 1. If you wanna read more or wanna listen to more, you can go to this specific link and hit subscribe." That's one way. 2, you can have it basically have them add the book to their podcasts crafting section of Spotify, like their library. So, a few different things that you can do. You can honestly direct them anywhere. That doesn't mean necessarily that they'll go. And something else you'll want to add is the actual link to wherever you're bringing them in the description of the episode. Next, welcome music. We talked a little bit about that, but making it immersive. So, if you have a fiction podcast that's fantasy based, maybe you have like fantastical type of music, or whenever a magic spell is cast, maybe there's, I don't know, twinkle or whatever it is. However, you imagine magic sounding like in your world, you can add that in as you go. And adding the SFX and music brings that story to life a little bit more. We talked a little bit about in written serials how you could bring your characters to life just by different ways. In your community, you could have them visit and be like, "Hey, I hope you enjoy this chapter that I starred in." You can also have fan fiction contests. What you can do in your fiction podcast or audio drama is spice it up with that music, those FS. Maybe you have bloopers too that you can add to the end of every episode that kind of just like pokes fun at what it is. So all these different little things to make your podcast serialized and immersive. That is audio dramas, fiction podcasts, and how to do audio serials. You can dive a lot deeper into these specific areas, but I just want to leave it there for now. But yeah, I will see you in the next section.